important. Did anyone here ever read Book Thief? That book comes up in there, right? You were given this book for when you got married or when you had a child. Everybody had this book displayed in their house because it was supposedly really important. And you did not want to be persecuted. If you didn't have this book, people might think you weren't a good German, and that wasn't good. And it had his racist, horrible, prejudiced views completely spelled out in this book. And it went everywhere. He blames the Jews and the Slavic people for Germany's problems. Slavic would be Polish, Yugoslavian, Czechoslovakian. He didn't like any of those people. He thought that they were bad, not good influences, not pure German, and he wanted to eliminate them. He was going to trample over their countries and take over.
In the book, The Book Thief, wasn't it the Jew that they were hiding in the basement with the book?
I don't remember that detail, but it could be. It could be. I don't remember. So he wanted to make everybody Aryan, and he blamed the Jews for all the problems. It's their fault that our country is in bad shape right now. In 1929, the stock market crashed, and it sent the world into a depression. So Germany's problems just multiplied, and they just got worse. So now, not only was Germany having trouble before, now we have a worldwide depression, and things are really bad. Food lines everywhere, people without jobs, everything. So Adolf Hitler took advantage of this and started spewing his hate speech about how, if only the Jews would give up some of their money, maybe, see, they thought they were all rich, I don't know why, but if they would just give up some of their money, we would be okay. It's their fault that we're in this economic depression. They started it. Does that make sense to you guys? I mean, do you think that's a rational way of thinking? I don't think so. It doesn't make sense. So why do you think people were listening to him?
Because they were afraid.
Yeah, they were afraid. What else? Why would you believe that nonsense? That just this religious race is causing all the problems in the world? He was an extremely persuasive speaker. He would have these ginormous crowds, and he had these gestures, and we'll probably watch a little bit of him once, just to see it. Of course, it's in German, but he was just like this speaker, and people just glommed onto him. They wanted to believe that he was going to save them, to make their world better. Okay? So in 1933, he pretty much took over the country, and he becomes the leader of Germany. He did this basically by strong-arming his way in there. He was a part of a political party that gained power, and that's a whole other story, but he became the Führer. Führer or Führer? Führer, which was means, do you know what that means? I think it means all-powerful or something. And you did not give him any advice he did not want to hear. In 1933, he opened the first concentration camp, which was not a nice place to be. A concentration camp was basically where he would send people to die. You were either gassed to death, put into showers where instead of water, gas would come out and choke you till you died, or they would work you to death or starve you to death. You pretty much lived on water soup.
There is also in some concentration camps pre the gassing that they would shoot them.
Yeah. Later on, they decided they didn't want to waste bullets, so they had a way to gas them. So that started in 1933, mostly for political prisoners or people that didn't believe in Hitler and went against him. He started boycotting Jewish business. What does it mean if you boycott? What does it mean to boycott? Yeah.
If it's a store, you don't go there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of
Yep.
stay far away from it.
Yeah, so for example, if you guys were mad at the lunch because you didn't like the lunch line because you didn't like what they were offering, you would set up a boycott and you'd say, we're all going to bring cold lunch. What happens to a business if nobody shops there?
It goes on.
It goes out of business. So he didn't want anyone shopping at Jewish businesses. That was not good. Yes?
Were we all like the perfect people when this was happening? Were they helping or were they just like living their life?
That is a great question, Audrey, which we're going to explore later too. So Audrey's question is like, where are all these Germans? What are they thinking? Well, a lot of them were out of jobs. They didn't have any jobs. Hitler promised them, hey, if I'm going to be the leader and I'm going to give you jobs. They started to follow him. A lot of people had hatred anyway, were very prejudiced or bigoted against the Jews to begin with. So now they were able, because it was like Hitler said we could, they started to show their prejudice and beat Jews in the street and do all kinds of nasty things. Some Germans were completely and utterly against this, but also very afraid. Because if you were not on Hitler's side, you were considered un-German, and you could be thrown in prison. So a lot of people were silent bystanders who just watched the things that were happening, didn't help, didn't participate, but also didn't stop it because they were afraid for themselves or their family. In 1933, the Nazis decided they were going to burn books considered to be un-German-like. In the book, they did this. Anything that was written by a foreigner, anything written by a Jew, anything that went against Hitler's ideas, they would take these huge, out of libraries, and they would just grab all these books out of universities and throw them into big piles in the middle of the town and torch them into these huge fires. Because they didn't want people reading things that they thought would go against their beliefs, Hitler and the Nazi Party. Then there was something called The Night of the Long Knives, and there's this excellent movie. Do you remember the name of that movie? Well, anyway, there's this great movie about it. Basically what Hitler did was, there was a plot to try to kill him. He found out, and he pretty much blockaded a building and ended up shooting. Not him himself. Hitler never did that. He always had people to do that for him. He pretty much got rid of these people that he thought were against him, and then that way he completely took over the government. There's a great movie about it. There is. 1935, they began these things called Nuremberg race laws, which were laws against Jews. You couldn't marry anyone who was Jewish. If your grandmother or grandfather way, way back was Jewish, then you were considered Jewish. What else did they do? They had pictures. They would measure your noses. They thought that Jews had a certain look to their nose, so they would measure their noses so that they could have a way to tell if you were Jewish. They had records of everybody and what their religion was. Restriction after restriction after restriction. You couldn't, if you were Jewish, you couldn't own a business. You couldn't own certain things. They just started squeezing them really, really badly. In 1938, Germany overtakes Czechoslovakia. Remember, this is a Slavic country. Germany doesn't like him. They're going to take over all of Europe, so they have lots of places to make their beautiful Aryan race of people. In 1938, something tremendously bad happened called Kristallnacht. It's called the Night of Broken Glass. There was an incident where a Jewish boy ended up killing somebody who was not Jewish. So the Germans used that excuse to go into German businesses and homes and smash them to pieces. What did I say?
You said German homes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jewish homes, my bad. And they took this opportunity to go in and smash up businesses. They pulled hundreds of Jewish men and boys out onto the street and beat them, put them into trucks and took them away, and they were never seen again. Jewish businesses were burned to the ground. It was very, very ugly. 25,000 Jewish men were rounded up and sent to concentration camps, never seen again. So I know these are hard pictures to see, but this is like a storefront completely busted out. Here's a house or a church or something burning. Here's the men they had just lined up to take away. It was tremendous, and it was like, this made the national news, the world news. It was everywhere. People from all across the world heard about it. It was a pretty bad situation. And then at that point, a lot of Jewish families said, "Wozie, this is not good. I can tell what's happening." And a lot of people started to get out of Germany, and they moved to other countries in Europe, only to find out 10 years or 5 or 6 years later, he invaded that country too. So they weren't able to move far enough away. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and England had said, "That's enough. This guy cannot continue to trample on all these countries." So England declared war on Germany, and so the World War II actually started at that time. The U.S. did not get into it till later. Then, it's not bad enough that he picks on the Jews. He decides that people that are sick, maybe with cancer or have MS or some kind of disease, even deaf and blind people, he decided we need to get rid of them. So he would kill them off because they were not perfect and were not going to help his perfect race. In 1940, Germany invaded Denmark and Norway and France and Romania. They started to send their planes across the English Channel, bomb the heck out of London. He was marching across Europe. He had this super powerful army, and he just basically took over many, many countries in Europe, almost all of them. So you can see in this map pretty much where he had taken over. He was everywhere. Where is Germany? Oh, here's Germany. He invaded Poland. He took all of this land, pretty much everything here, except for United Kingdom, who was fighting him. He even got up into here, Finland, Norway, Sweden. Russia was an ally of the United States, and they were, of England at the time, and so they were fighting against him. France was fighting against him. But, he had so much land and so much power that he just was going to march across. This was the only thing right here, this water, that was saving England, and that they were fighting against him. So his goal, if they were here in Belgium, his goal was to get over here and take over England. In 1941, he decided to squeeze the Jews even more. He made them wear yellow stars on their clothing to identify them. Every piece of clothing that you wore on the outside of your house had to have a yellow star on it. He began the first gas chambers at the most horrible, horrific concentration camp called Auschwitz. People would be transported there in train cars, stripped, shaved, and sent to a gas chamber, where instead of water, they thought it was a shower. Instead of water, it was gas that would choke you and kill you. Most women and children were killed immediately. Anyone under the age of 15, women and children, anyone elderly, was pretty much sent to the gas chamber. If you were not able and strong to work in these camps, you were immediately gassed. The Nazis in Poland murdered 33,771 Jews. They decided that at the beginning of the war, instead of transporting them to camps, that it would be more effective to just round them up and take them out into the woods and shoot them. So they would have hundreds of people digging a